Here's the achievements for today. You now know how to clearly communicate the exact outcome that you want. You also have a simple strategy that you can implement and follow today and every day moving forward. And all that's left is taking action. Today, we're going to talk about how to build a FlowChat system that transforms your business, right? Like Transformers. If y'all love Transformers, Bumblebee is one of my favorites, but a lot of people understand. And if you think about a great example is building a funnel. Like most people think because of some marketing that's been done in the past is like, if I have a funnel, that's all I ever need and everything's good and I'm great and grand and done. Well, the problem is if you get a funnel, that's great, but you still need copywriting and you still need team and you still need processors to like merchant processors and you still need all these other pieces. And sometimes we don't get all the pieces put together. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through building a FlowChat system that truly transforms a business. And it's exactly how we operate internally. Warning, knowledge is not power. So a lot of times people consume theory, right? You know, the people, they're like, hey, I just bought this new course, and they eat all the course and they know everything theory-wise and they can conversate about stuff on theory all the time, but they don't ever apply it. The truth is applied knowledge is power, right? So if you think about a train, the knowledge of the trainer, if the train has got all the, the fuel in it, the coal, the setup, the lights, the gas, everything that it needs, but it's not moving, it's not powerful. It's not until that train starts moving when you apply all of that stuff when the power actually starts to come down the line. So again, I'm going to give you some theory today. Your job is to actually apply the knowledge that we're going through. So goals for today, very simple. Number one, I want to share with you guys a way to clearly communicate the exact outcome you want from building your FlowChat system. Number two, providing a simple strategy you can implement and follow. Again, applied knowledge is the thing. And then number three here, oops, is that it? Number three is to share a few pro tips to get you extraordinary results, because that's what it's about, right? So let's talk about the keys to transformation. It's very simple. I'm going to cover three things: expectations, rules, and then pro tips. That's it. If you know these three things, you're going to win at the highest level. We always start with the target. So whenever we start with a target in anything, we're always thinking about beginning with the end in mind, right? And so what do we want our FlowChat system to do in order to transform our business? Perhaps you want calls. Perhaps you want people to go to your website. Perhaps you're trying to build a challenge or build a podcast up or something like that. And we always think about, like, if I'm here in 12 months from now, I want to be there. That's the result or the end in mind that I want, right? And then we can reverse engineer and we can get micro granular to the point where we know exactly the outcomes that are necessary to get to that target down the road. So here's a big system and team overview setup, right? The system is perfect. FlowChat is perfect. The system works. It's been 100% proven by hundreds and hundreds of businesses now. So you have the system, right? The system, the tech is the backbone, the infrastructure, the skeleton of how everything works. Now we know that's the system, but who's the team? Well, at first, it's you, right? First, it's you. And you kind of have to do everything. You have to learn it. You have to know it. You have to see how the messaging works. You have to do the setup. Of course, we can assist with all that stuff. But the point I'm making here is it always starts with you. Your first hire for your team is going to be a VA. Very simple to do. Cody just got a new VA, or Natasha is, talking about VAs all the time. But what we want to do is you start, you learn it, then you bring a VA on to offload some of the heavy lifting inside of the flow. Secondly, then you bring on a setter. An appointment setter is that person that's going to be doing some of the off-script response, some of the other things that are going on. And then, of course, lastly, you'll be doing, or, usually you'd start with doing the closing work, and then eventually you bring on a closer. So it's a three-part system and team set up this way, right? This is exactly how we operate. We have teams of VAs, we have a team of setters, and we have a team of closers. But we started with me and Chris, that was the you, right? And then we brought on Hannah. Hannah started learning. She actually took the place of that VA and did a lot of our heavy lifting at first. And then we hired another VA and another VA and another VA and another VA until we had a big team of them. And then we made Hannah manage all of those VAs. Then we brought on a team of setters, and then we brought on a team of closers in that order, right? And then once you have this thing running, you find somebody to replace yourself out of the equation. And that's how you as an entrepreneur will continue to grow, and you can install a predictable and consistent system that will always pump out opportunity every single day for your business. So first it starts with you, then you bring on the strategic people, and then you replace yourself. That's the point. What's the target for this example? Let's say you're trying to book calls. Okay. Most people like booking calls because booking calls leads to lots of deals. Let's say we're trying to book 10 calls per week from Facebook. That is our target. That is the end in mind that we want. We want a consistent flow of 10 calls every week coming in. What does that mean? We have to book 2 to 3 calls per day. Well, if we have 5 working days in a week times 2, that's 10 calls. Why do I have 2 or 3 calls booked a day? Because sometimes people no show. Sometimes people cancel. Sometimes people ghost you. So if we have a consistent 2 to 3 calls booking per day, you're probably going to come very close to having that 10 calls book every single week, right? And we're specific on Facebook for this example as we move forward. So now let's get into the keys for transformation. First of all, the expectations. First thing we want to do is we want to clearly communicate. The more clear we communicate the exact system we want, plus the outcomes, the faster we're going to achieve it. So the first thing is I'm going to give you an easy way to communicate exactly what you're building. Secondly, an easy way to communicate what you expect from your team. And then lastly, a way to communicate exactly the dedication needed on all fronts to achieve the outcome. So this is what we're going to cover here right now. The team is set up in this way, right? You are kind of managing the system. And when you bring on a VA, the VA becomes responsible for the first part of the flow, right? The first part of the flow is find, fill, qualify, and then connect and engage. That is their responsibility, right? And I'll give you some explicit detail here as we get to the end of this, but just understand what we're doing. So a VA's responsibility is to go, you're going to give them some coaching and say, this is who I'm looking for. They're going to go find those people, put them in your pipeline. They're going to qualify those people against the criteria that you gave them. Then they're going to connect and get engagement with them, getting a response from them. That's what the VA's responsibility is in your system. Okay. So they manage the first couple of stages of the flow. And then once the engaged piece comes back, now the setter takes over. The setter's responsibilities are to take that engaged conversation, transition it from where it's at, and then do an invite, book the call, and then hand off the call to the sales team. Very simple. These are how the responsibilities are spread, and then everybody knows exactly what they're responsible for. So once you know the expectations, now let's dive into some of the rules. Very simple. The rules are as follows. Number 1, for the VAs, the maximum amount of outreach will be done every day. That is a rule. That's what the VAs have to do. Okay. Example, if we're working on one profile specifically on Facebook, then 30 new friend requests and 30 new initial messages are sent per day. If you have 2 profiles, then it's 60. If you have 3 profiles, then it's 90, right? So in our case, we use Chris's profile, Sean's profile, and Bruno's profile. So on average, if you looked at our numbers, you would see anywhere from 80 to 90 messages new being sent each and every single day just on our Facebook side alone. That is input into the system. Okay, so that's the first rule. Secondly here, qualification is the key. 30 new opportunities. So let's figure out, like, if we're looking at metrics and we're giving a metric to a VA, we say, look, we're using one profile. You need to do 30 new opportunities every single working day of the month. There's 20. So 30 times 20 is 600 qualified prospects per month need to be put into your pipeline. If your VA is not doing that, we need to replace your VA. That is their baseline amount minimum as a one profile on Facebook that they should be using and finding for you, because this will guarantee that you always have information or more opportunities moving through your pipeline. Nextly, we should always look for our response rate. Response rate from our initial messaging that the VAs are doing should be anywhere from 15 to 60%. The better message and the better market that you match, the better response rate that you're going to get. What Chris always says is true: right message, right people equals massive result. That's it. Okay. Next, VA is responsible to get the engagement. And what do I mean by this is they're going to do the initial outreach after they have someone that's qualified, and they're going to do up to 2 different follow-ups to get a response. This is very black and white. If they don't respond, it's click, paste, send, move card, click, paste, send, move card. And if they don't respond after that 3rd time, the initial outreach plus the 2, then they're getting marked as unresponsive, and we move to the next opportunity. Very, very clear. So that's the rule number 1. Rule number 2. Rule number 2 here is it pops up. Setters are responsible from engagement to book calls, just like I showed you in that overview. Here's a couple of things to know. They are required to book 2 to 3 calls per day. Well, Sean, How do we even manage or judge that or look at it? Well, very simply, in our case, we know, and this should be the benchmark standard for you guys to start from. If our setters, one of our setters sends 10 booking links in a single day, statistically over time, we've seen that 2 to 3 calls will get booked. So now that becomes the KPI baseline for your VA or your setter, right? If your setter is doing this part, the setter should be doing this part. As you say, the the KPI, which is the key performance indicator, is focusing on how many booking links are being sent every single day. And what's important is those booking links need to be sent not as a pushy context, but rather as a conversation kind of develops. Rule number 3 is the setter, once they've booked a call, is responsible to create a 3-way connection to the sales pro. Now, if you don't have a sales pro yet and you're taking the calls, that's pretty easy. You can just take over the conversation. However, if you have this 3-person team set up, then the setter is also responsible for doing a 3-way connection. They create a new message with the prospect, the sales pro's profile, and the profile being used to connect. So that would be like, in our example, it would be like, my profile is the one that's being used to connect. We have a sales pro, Jarrett, April, Bill, Ravi, whoever, and then we have the prospect. So that 3-way conversation is started and handed off, and the setter is now hands-free of that, and the closer now becomes responsible to actually close that deal. The setter's main KPI is booking links being sent every day. So if you're not looking at that, when I work with my setters, the first thing I say, and I actually do, and I'm going to go through this a little bit more in detail for you, is I say, hey, how many booking links did you send yesterday? And I pull up a tracking sheet and we look at it. Did you get your 10? Yes or no? What, if no, why not? Right? And now we're going down the line of making sure that we're having, and if we have 3 setters, that's 30 booking links getting sent a day. We're going to start booking a lot of calls, all the time. So now you know the rules, very simple rules to follow. VA must send max amount of outreach. Setters are responsible from connection to call and handing off, right? That's it. Here's some pro tips. When we're looking at VA, I want to talk about the virtual assistant compensation expectations. Number 1, $3 to $7 per hour is standard. So if you're paying that $3 to $7 per hour, you're in the right range. This is important. Next, the target KPIs for VAs is very simple. How many profiles were qualified? We went through the example of saying 600 per month is your target each and every month, 30 per day on the working days times 20 working days of the month. That's what we focus on. If they're not hitting that number, we need to find one that can, right? And the second one is we look at responses received to see if we're hitting that 15 to 60% responses. If we're not, then it's on us to go back in, maybe change the messaging around a little bit, or to redefine our ICP, ideal client profile, so that then the VA can send the same message to the better people. Again, right message, right people equals big results. One profile at 30 opportunities per day times 20 working days in a month. Like I mentioned, 600 qualified prospects is the key baseline for any VA. And the amount of hours worked varies based on the VA's abilities. Some VAs are going to be able to do way more than this. Some VAs aren't, right? We've had experiences on both sides of the coin. So that's some pro tips around the VA compensation. Now let's talk about the setters. Here's the setter compensation expectations. $1K per month base salary for them to attend your meetings and for them to learn from you and absorb from you, right? And then be a team player, report, drop all the other stuff. That's what they get their base for. And then when an initial call is completed, we pay them $25, right? That's what we do. And then when a deal gets closed with the call that was just completed, they get another $25, right? And if you have a consistent flow of 2 to 3 calls being booked every single day, and those calls are getting completed every single week, we can get to a place where we have, the golden rule for a setter, I guess, is right here. A range for a happy setter is $3,000 to $7,000 a month, right? What we do as well is we include bonuses like first call booked or first deal closed, and we prefer sending gift cards, work gifts, or even creating experiences. Example, if you have a setter who has a husband or a wife that loves like fine dining or something, maybe you hire a chef. They do something really awesome, hire like a chef for a night to come in and do an experience for them. Because when you give somebody in your company an experience like that, they will never forget you, and they will always want to be working with you forever and ever, because it's just a better experience. If you can be an outlier when it comes to what you're providing your setters, you're going to do much, much better. Okay. Next is some training suggestions when it comes to VAs, right? Monkey see, monkey do, right? What we want to do is we want to meet with a VA every day for the first 3 weeks minimum. Let me repeat that. Meet every day with your VA for the first 3 weeks minimum, right? And we're going to show them step by step how to execute on find, fill, and qualify. And we start with 10 out of 10. Get that. The day one training is go find 10 people that match this profile, put them in the pipeline. Let's talk about it. You got this one. You didn't get this one. You got this one. You didn't get this one. And you go through that over and over and over until they consistently get 10 out of 10 every single day. When you have that, you move on to the next step. Now, how do we do the connection piece? And you show them how to click the button. So you screen share in a meeting with them. You click the button, you send the first message, and you move the card. And then you say, I did it. Now I want to see you do it. They open their flow chat, they click the button, they send the message, they move the card. And you say, good. Can you do that every single day for at least 30 people every single day? The answer is yes. And then you replace yourself by saying, you know, your VA is going to move forward. You also replace yourself if you find one VA that happens to be better than the rest of them. That VA can, depending on how big you want your business to become, you would then replace that VA with like a VA manager who would then oversee everything else. So that so now that we've talked about VAs, let's talk about setter training just for a second. Setters are a little bit more advanced in terms of a mental capacity and competency than a virtual assistant, and should be. What they look for is advancement. So I'm going to share very clearly when we brought on a setter force, this is how we have it set up. Okay. First thing is to say, look, guys, this is a 12 to 18 month position. At the end of 12 to 18 months, and you're hitting all your metrics, you're making your $3,000 to $7,000 per month, you're going to have a choice to advance. The first choice you have is you can continue being a setter for us. I want you to do that. That's awesome. Stay with us forever. That's great. You can continue making this much money. It's pretty easy for you now, whatever. So continuing as a setter is number one. Number two, they can become a closer. If you like the setter and how they're working, you can say, hey, do you want to take the next step into becoming a sales professional? I can work with you to do that. And now if you're doing all the closing in that 12 to 18 months, you can bring that setter in, and then they can start actually having those conversations. Of course, then you're going to have to replace that person as your setter on your team. So, and then what you can do is you can leverage their ability to actually coach and train the new person that's coming in, and you create this cyclical effect of where your team will continue to grow, right? So second thing is they can become a closer. So they can stay as a setter, they can become a closer. The third one is you might have a manager position. So in our case, as our teams are going to continue to grow, Chris and I are destined to build this to $100 million software organization. There's going to be room for becoming a VA or a setter manager. So the third option for us is they can become a manager. And then the fourth one is even better, is you can become a sales affiliate, go off on your own, build your own team. So we give room for advancement in 4 different patterns. So we say, hey, setter position, 12 to 18 months. Here's the 4 options you have to move forward. Your job training a setter is to help them to personally grow. You need to teach them a bunch of different things, right? They should also be following a strict process when they first get started that you help implement them. Here is the process that we follow when we are doing a FlowChat pipeline. First and foremost, we always want to respond to the people that are swimming in our direction. Those are the people that send messages back to us. So when I have my setters start, what they do is they open up FlowChat, and then they go right to the platform that they're working on. They go into the messenger bin before they click on any cards, and we only start working on the unread messages first. We'll go into that message, we'll use the overlay feature, we'll send the next message, and we'll move the cards, and we'll go clear out all the unread messages first. And once those are done for the day, then we move to off-script messages. These are particular prospects that have maybe asked a question that the system or the automatic flow can't answer. So now we're going to go answer kind of the tougher questions first, get those out of the way. Once that's done, now we start dealing with all the rest of the lead-in cards that are in our pipeline. And we're always going to work from right to left. If the objective is to close a call, then that's going to be farther onto the right side of your pipeline. So we want to work right to left, going backwards. And lastly, once we've done that, if the VA is not able to get all the new outreach done, then the setter will jump in and help with the new outreach. So this is the strict process that we have our setters follow each and every single day, right? So they always know they start here, and then they go there and there and there, and that's it. Okay. Couple of pro tips when you're still training your setters. The training meeting structure, very valuable. So what did we do? When we first started training VAs, we met with them every day for 3 weeks for an hour, and we got them to do every step until it was perfect. And then we put Hannah in to manage them. Setters is a similar training structure, right? I meet with them Monday through Thursday, 1 hour a day. And we do 5 minutes of wins. What was your big win from yesterday? Hey, I saw our system says we booked X amount of calls. We booked 8 calls yesterday. Who booked the calls? Let's celebrate that. That's amazing, right? What's your other big wins going on, right? And then they tell us and they say, how was it? What was the conversation like? And we get into it for about 5 minutes. After wins, then we just turn it right into response coaching. Okay, great. Where'd you get stuck on your messages today? Pull up the conversations and let's go. The setter will screen share. They will start going through all of their messages. And then you, as the founder or the entrepreneur or the sales professional that's running the whole system, will say, okay, if I'm in this position, this is how I would respond and why. It's very important to give that setter the why reason, because then they'll know how to do it next time. I include sales techniques, patterns, and frameworks. I do it through teaching little stories that I've learned over the past 20 some years. And it works really, really well. They remember the stories. My setters even told me today, one of them, Martin, he was like, man, I have this notebook full of your stories because I remember everything you said. And I was like, great, so that works, right? And then how do you communicate with your setter force? Daily, like I mentioned, but also you have to have an outlet where they can have communication company-wise. So we use Slack. We have our sales professionals and our setters and our leadership in one channel focused on the setters only. If the setters ever need support, I'm always their first line. Hannah is their second line of defense. Chris, Bruno, rest of our leadership becomes the third and fourth and fifth lines of defense as necessary. And of course, our sales pros as well. So there's a lot of support that we can provide. We also use our Slack channel for them to celebrate. Hey, I just booked a call. And then everyone's like, yay. And we put the little emoticons on it. So because that's what we rally around. So we use Slack. You guys can use whatever you want. And then don't forget, culture building is so valuable. Celebrate wins every day. Definitely, because most people are living in this negative world. You have to bring positivity. That's why Chris and I do wins every single meeting that we've ever done. And secondly, build team rapport. One of the things that I do with our setters specifically is from time to time, I'll have a team member come in. Like, for example, Hannah runs our VA department. So I'm going to have Hannah come in for 5, 10, 15 minutes in a setters conversation. The first part would be like, hey guys, this is Hannah. Here's what she is. She's some questions she's got for you. They start bantering back and forth. Everyone knows and meets Hannah and they're like, oh, that's awesome. In the next couple of weeks, I'm going to have Chris come in. Chris is going to come in and work with some of the setters so they get to know him a little bit better. And what that does is it builds cohesion around your whole entire team, which is really, really powerful. When you have that team rapport, they don't feel as ostracized or out of place to go into that setters channel and be like, hey, Chris, I need your support on this, right? Or hey, Bruno, or hey, Hannah, or whoever the case may be. And a couple more pro tips here, right? This is some bonus pro tips. There's 3 pillars that come down to this whole thing. Number 1 is you got to have the right message. That's the infrastructure. You got your pipeline. You got to make sure specifically your first couple of messages are very on point with your head, your heart, and your brand. So that's what we can help you with from a strategy level. That's why we're here in these sessions on Tuesdays and Thursdays, is to help you guys with that messaging and the structure setup. Secondly is the right market. It's very important that we identify our exact ideal client profile, because if you have the right message and the right market, you get massive results. So that's pillar number 2. And the last one, of course, is the team and the system. When you have all of these things in sync and working together, your system will predictably and consistently and robustly produce the outcome that you're always trying to achieve. One last thing, X factor. Okay, you have to bring the X factor. And what I mean by this is you have to be hungry to consistently and continue optimizing this thing until it works 100 times out of 100 times. And a lot of people fall short on this little X factor because they're like, well, I got it all set up. It should just run. No, it's not push a button and get rich. It doesn't work that way, right? We have to put the system in and spend some time in the beginning to get all the system and execution and all the other parts up and running. And only when we have that fully optimized can we say, yes, this thing is running. So it does take a little bit of devotion to do it. Most businesses that I see, I've seen it, the fastest I've ever seen it done is in about 30 days. right? But these people already had team and system in place. They'd already been doing a DM outreach game. For those people that have never done this before, it can take anywhere from 90 to 180 days. We're talking 3 to 6 months before we have a fully optimized system, typically, right? And so that's why we're here, and we show up every single week for you guys to make sure that we can accelerate this process for you so that you can always have that X factor moving forward. So the more you show up and the more you plug in, the better off you're going to be. And with that said, guys, here's the achievements for today. You now know how to clearly communicate the exact outcome that you want. You also have a simple strategy that you can implement and follow today and every day moving forward. And all that's left is taking action.